I'm Leon Todd for G66. Welcome to another Tuesday Tone Tip. Today we're on the FM3 and I want to talk about parallel effects routing. I want to cover the basics and also give you some of my favorite creative examples of using effects in parallel to create brand new effects. Before we get started, I've got my Les Paul plugged into the FM3 and I have the USA Clean model dialed up. It's not really about the amp tone today anyway. I just wanted to lay the platform with a nice clean sound right there, and this is a great model to get started. Let's start with an example, and my favorite example for demonstrating this is the use of a delay and a reverb block together. If we connected these blocks in series, we would simply go like this. Let's add a delay block somewhere after the cab, and let's just stick with one of my favorite delay blocks, the stereo BBD. I like to set the left-right time ratio to 75% on this block and basically leave everything else alone. It gives us a really sweet sounding warm delay. Wonderful stuff. Let's add a reverb block. I'm going to go for a reverb that I have really been enjoying recently. It is the concert hall reverb. This is kind of like a lexicon style reverb. At the stock settings, it sounds pretty fantastic. I'm just going to bypass the delay while we go. Let's have a listen. That is lush. That is gorgeous. If I connect both blocks, have a listen to the delay trails as they feed into the reverb. What's happening there is even after I've stopped playing, the delay repeats are still feeding into the reverb block. And let's say I don't want that. What that's kind of doing is, I guess, artificially blowing out the size of the reverb. It's in no way bad or wrong, but we can connect these two blocks in parallel if we don't want that effect. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to leave my delay block right here, and I'm simply going to drag the reverb block up above it. I do need to reconnect these shunts right here, and I'm going to connect the reverb up here in a parallel row. Now, when you do connect a block in parallel, follow these steps. Set the mix control on the block to 100%, and set the bypass mode to either mute effects in, mute effects out, mute in, or mute out. Mute effects in is probably the best way to go, because when you bypass the block, you're still going to get the reverb tail on there. It's not going to be cut off sharply. If you do want that effect, set it to something like mute effects out or mute out. Anyway, I've got the mix at 100%, and I can either use the level control or the input gain control to control the volume of my reverb. Let's set the input gain, say, to about 30%. If I bypass my delay block, I'm still just going to have a sweet reverb. It's a really addictive reverb block. If I engage the delay now though, what's going to happen is the delay is not feeding into the reverb, so those delay repeats aren't going to be basically triggering the reverb. To my ears, it just sounds a little bit cleaner and more defined and controlled. You might prefer it this way, you might prefer it the other way. Just use the one that sounds best to you. Also, the delay repeats aren't getting washed out by that reverb. That's just one example of connecting blocks in parallel. If I wanted to add another block in here, for example, let's, above the reverb, add a multi-tap delay block. And I'm actually going to reference my blocks library. Where's the multi-tap delay? Right down here. And this is a block that basically replicates the Lexicon PCM70 circular delays preset. So let's dial that one up. Where is it? I think I picked the right one. Here we go. So you can see there's a bunch of delays in there. This one has been saved with the mix at 100%. And instead of using the input gain, it's using the level control to blend this effect in. This is what I get. So you can hear there the delays are doing their thing, the reverb's doing their thing, and the multi-delay is doing its thing. None of them are feeding into one another, and it's all quite clean and discreet. If I swap over to a dirty amp sound, this is a glorious lead tone. That's a really good example there. I better go back to the clean amp where you can hear the reverb and the delay die down, but that multi-delay keeps doing its thing. So that's one justification for connecting these blocks in parallel. The other one, I'm going to delete that multi-tap delay and this delay block here, is that you can do things such as cascade effects blocks together without affecting your dry tone. For example, if I wanted to add a tremolo here, let's put it at the end. So I want like a reverb feeding into a trem, but I connect it somewhere down here. Let's just go with the tremolo panner block. I really like the sound of the bias trem at stock settings. What's happening here is I'm feeding my dry signal and my reverb signal mixed together into the trem. So like everything is wobbling. Which in no way sounds terrible, but this is one of my favorite ways to combine blocks. If I pull this trem block up here in parallel, again, I'll reconnect these shunts, I can set this so that the trem is only acting on the reverb trail. So let's look at the reverb. I'm actually going to turn the input gain all the way up so we can really hear this effect. I've got the reverb block connected in parallel. Its mix is at 100%. Bypass mode is mute effects in. My dry signal now is not passing through the tremolo at all. Only the reverb trails are going to wobble. This is a totally different thing, and I think it is so musical and inspiring. Check it out. Again, it has a whole lot more clarity in there to my ears anyway, and overall, it's a far more subtle effect. So rather than have the whole thing wobble, it's just the reverb trails. Another example of that, let's swap the order of these two blocks, would be running the pitch crystals algorithm into the reverb. So again, with this pitch block, let's bring it up. I'm going to select the crystal echoes. I'm going to set the mix to 100% and the bypass mode to mute effects in. I'm just going to totally shunt this reverb for now because I want to dial in this pitch sound. Let's do this. Let's set this for 12 semitones higher, a classic kind of shimmer. I'm going to pan the voices hard left and hard right. I'm going to use quite a bit of high cut in this example. Let's set the high cut to 4K and no delay, no detune, no feedback. This is already a pretty sweet and inspiring shimmer. Amazing, right? What if I feed that into a reverb though? Let's bring that reverb block back up. I'm just going to crank the input gain. So this is going to be super washed out. I might actually use a different reverb type. Let's go for something like the music hall, which has a slightly longer delay time. This is amazing now. So the effect is far more subtle in that case, but it's just kind of like warm and comforting and shimmery. If I wanted more of that pitch crystals thing to come through, because I've already set the bypass mode and the mix in the first block to 100%, I can maybe just blend in my reverb and mix it in. Let's go for maybe 40% reverb mix on this. This is going to be far more pronounced. And just for one more example, let's take that even further and we'll add in our little tremolo trick from before. I'll just use the bias trem at the stock settings. Now I've got this big shimmer effect going into a reverb, going into a tremolo. I'm going to say thank you all so much for watching the video. I'll play you out on this example. If you have any further questions about parallel effects routing or the FM3 in general, let me know in the comments. I'll see you next week. Thanks for watching.